Forgive my curiosity, but what is that?
That's my little Octopussy.
Welcome back to Ranked. Charles.
I'm McCurdy.
Scott.
I'm Nathan.
Clean as a whistle. Okay. The evil empire strikes back as 007 jumps once more into the not-so-Cold War, taking over the killed-in-action 009's investigation of a smuggling operation headed up by the titular Octopussy. Titular Octopussy. Scaramanga's resurrected girlfriend. After Baron Samedi dug the golden slug out of her chest and brought her back to life, she fell in cahoots with an exiled Afghan prince and a radical Russian general to steal famous Russian jewels in order to finance an invasion of Western Europe, or to buy an atomic bomb, or just to trick Octopussy into smuggling a bomb into West Berlin by promising her the original jewels they stole from the Russians and replaced with fakes, and then stealing back the jewels rather than just blowing up the fakes? Or all of the above, or whatever. It's a bit unclear, but who cares about a clear plot when there's so much good Octopussy dazzling your face? All you need to know is that in the end, Bond finally lives his ultimate fantasy of sailing off into a sunset with an army of superbabes chanting in, out, as he in-outs their queen. As far as visual metaphors are concerned, the series could have ended here, but really, we're just getting started. So anyway, on that note, if you're just joining us, so far we've ranked all the Bond movies up until this point. You can see below me. This episode's mission is to find the perfect spot for this film, Octopussy. But first, McCurdy has some historical knowledge.
All right. Of course I do. Octopussy. We can't talk about Octopussy without talking about the notorious Battle of the Bonds that happened in the year of our Lord, 1983. Our old friend and nemesis to Eon Productions, Kevin McClory, had announced his long-awaited remake to Thunderball, Never Say Never Again. So, while meanwhile...
Which we look forward to reviewing. I shake my head because once again we have Kevin McClory
coming up.
He's like Blofeld himself. Like,
yes.
There's such a similarity between him and his supposed creation, you know?
Yeah, so meanwhile, Roger Moore is looking long in the tooth, which we had mentioned previously in For Your Eyes Only. But this time, a very serious consideration was made for James Brolin, American actor, father of Thanos actor Josh Brolin, then a slew of other characters to take over the role of James Bond. He'd even done screen test with actress Maud Adams, who we will talk about in this film. Brolin had even stated that he was looking for a place to live in London, considering he was going to be the next Bond. But, as we all know, because of Kevin McClory's Thunderball remake was going to star the OG Bond, James Bond, Sean Connery. The producers made the last-minute decision to negotiate Roger Moore back once again as Bond, James Bond, feeling that he would compete better than an unknown, thus showing how Fleming's folly affected the Bond franchise both financially and creatively years later.
So real quick, by Fleming's folly, all that was that he'd outlined / written a screenplay with Kevin McClory and another guy, but then he turned that into a book. That's it?
Yeah, he did it without letting them know ahead of time that he was going to, and he didn't give him credit for it. So by doing so, it created this huge legal battle that doesn't end there. So this is not the final chapter to the Kevin McClory story.
Like, I can understand Kevin's story, but to jump into Ian Fleming's shoes for a second, his thought process is like, well, this is my series. Like, I came up with all this, and you just gave me an idea for one bad guy.
Yeah.
But
he even states, there's evidence to suggest that he came up with Blofeld, too. So it's not like...
Yeah. And I don't deny that. Yeah. I'm not saying he didn't,
no, I know.
But it's just, he's like, I want the rights to everything. Like he really is a Bond bad guy.
Yeah.
In and of himself. And I joked around last time about killing him, but like, I do kind of respect that. Like he's a straight up Bond villain. How many people can say that?
So, the upside to all this was the Octopussy was the standout winner financially for Eon. Never Say Never Again comes out in the fall. This movie came out in the summer. This movie made way more money than the predecessor did. So it was like the actual Bond franchise did better than the unofficial Bond remake that was kind of a failed experiment. Because I think McClory even wanted to go on, and he had the rights to Casino Royale. They wanted to start another Bond franchise with Columbia, but that never happened. But suffice it to say, this will be the last time we hear about all of this. So it'll come up again.
Do you know if he was Kevin's plan to continue to use Connery going forward?
I think that was his idea, but
Okay.
of course, we'll never know.
And I got to say, I wish he had succeeded. How cool would it have been just to have a couple more Connery movies, regardless of Eon or whatever, And
then also returning is Maud Adams as the lead female role and title character, Octopussy, who my wife wonders, does she have 8 pussies? I about said 9 pussies.
We all want to know the answer to that question.
My wife asked me that question, and I was like, no, that's not why, but okay.
Yeah.
And this
no. The proper answer is, well, that's because that's what her daddy used to call her.
His pet name for me was Octopussy.
There are several follow-up questions to that answer. Like,
Why? Would her dad call her that?
How many daddy issues does she have?
His little
As soon as Bond heard that, was he like, score? Like, daddy issues.
So let's see here. Mainly
this is going to be easier than solitaire.
Oh my god. Okay, mainly because of the screen test she had done with James Brolin, the producers decided to have Maud return. They had other actresses in mind, but they liked Maud and they liked working with her in The Man with the Golden Gun. She is the only returning lead actress to return in the franchise, even though there are other actresses that have made dual appearances, such as the gypsy girl from Russia with Love. Martina Beswick was also in Thunderball. And Eunice Gayson as Sylvia Tench.
Sylvia Trench.
And then we have Steve Burkoff plays General Orlov, who's probably best known for playing 80s villains, most notably Victor Maitland in Beverly Hills Cop, which is one of my favorite movies. And then we have Vijay Armitage plays VJ.
I'm Vijay, Special Expediter, Universal Exports. Tennis? I play a bit myself.
Who in reality is an actual champion tennis player, so the whole tennis bit was for a bit. And Cubby Broccoli saw him playing at Wimbledon and was like, I'm going to put you in the movie, because it's what producers do. They see things and they're like, I want to put this in the movie. In the Universal Exports office, we get our new M, played by actor Robert Brown, who played one of the admirals in The Spy Who Loved Me. It can either be assumed he's playing the original M or he was promoted to the new role. They never make that distinction. They're not very clear as to if M is a title or if it is actually his name.
We'll get more into this down the road, but somehow it's always both. M is both a title that means the person running the 00 program.
I hear the new M is a lady.
But at the same time, that person always has a name that starts with M.
Same way I found out your name. I thought M was a randomly assigned letter. I had no idea it stood for...
Utter one more syllable and I'll have you killed.
Bond. Mallory. With pleasure, M.
So it's both simultaneously. It's weird. But it all started with the original M, whose name we know was Miles.
After you, Alexis.
Oh, no, after you, Miles.
Oh, thank you.
Over time, it's like because M is so important, but if M suddenly turned into N, F,
T, Z, Q,
LMNOP, it might confuse people. So in the future, they just have a different person with a name that starts with the letter M take over, so that they can keep having an M, which only ever came about in the first place because MI6 is always shortening everything to the first letter of something. Like in the same way that they'll say Section J is Jamaica and
Section I is India, like in this film.
I'll alert Sadruddin, our man in Station I, to keep him under surveillance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they're doing the same thing with M, but then M is so well established that M just simply becomes the guy who runs the 00 program. Like it just, it's like, just don't think too much about it.
Yeah.
You know.
We also see a character that almost was, but then wasn't, and that was Penelope Smallbone,
This is Miss Penelope Smallbone, my new assistant.
who was intended to replace Moneypenny when Lois Maxwell decided to go, but they just decided, nah, never mind.
They realized how awful that name was.
Well, what's funny is in the featurette, on their first take, she said small bush instead of small bone. And Roger Moore kind of gave her shit about it. So it's kind
They
of
just
funny.
can't
that
help themselves.
Yeah. Nans, after watching this film for, I don't know if this is your first time seeing Octopussy or your 11th time.
No. First time for sure.
We want that Nan's gut reaction. Go.
Pretty good.
Hey!
Every time it's
Hey!
one or two words. It's all right. Would you care to elaborate on those two words, sir?
No.
No.
Lock it in.
Like most so far, I feel like the movies start really strong for me and then kind of trail off as they go on. They get deeper into like clarifying what a lot of the stuff they set up in the beginning. They start to do that in the later half of the film, and that's where like my eyes start to glaze over. I'm more interested in like all the setup stuff. I thought the pre-title sequence was really awesome. When I saw the clown, I got a little concerned. I was like, oh boy. But maybe that helped me establish like, okay, don't come into this movie taking it super seriously. Though it was a bit more of a serious, not a serious Bond, but less goofy than a lot of the other ones we've seen so far.
Well, with the clown, I like that it raises that question because there's a lot of people who they really focus. Like Patterson's not here, but if he was, he'd be really focused in on Bond should never dress like a clown, and maybe even the clown in the opening is kind of weird. But it does. It's an intriguing
the scene's really
opening,
intense, though.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
009, you're like, oh god, he's in a clown outfit. But
Yeah.
like the whole situation he's in is super intense.
Yeah.
Well, and obviously
So
you don't
it's
know he's
kinda takes the
009
edge
in the
off.
beginning.
Yeah.
He's just a clown, but then all of a sudden you see this clown pulling these like judo moves, and you're like, who is this guy? What I would ask you guys is, do you think that knowing now that he's a 00, should he have been a little bit more stoic, or do you think it works that he's like, you know, like if that was Bond, do you think Bond would be a little more serious in the face? Like I get what they were going for. This guy's obviously fearing for his life, but let me put it a different way. Can you imagine Alec Trevelyan, aka 006, dressed as a clown, looking terrified? No, he would it would be like when you see Bond later, and it's not Bond acting clownish. He's still a super spy who just, is in disguise, as opposed to
Is it supposed to make us really think these twin knife thrower guys are crazy awesome? Or
Yeah, it works in the end. I think it could have been either way, but it's definitely intriguing. I don't think people care until 007 is in clown makeup. It's an interesting setup. It raises a lot of questions, but then, like you said, I think once those questions are answered, you're kind of like, okay. Do you think, as Nance was saying, or hinting at, do you think that this is Roger Moore's best prologue?
I think I prefer when it's related to the main movie.
I agree.
And this is so just like
Yeah, no.
like not part of it at all.
Like based off what I've said in the past, this for me is technically a wasted prologue because it doesn't weigh in on the plot at all, but it's so awesome that I don't care.
Yeah,
and remember,
tiny
our
jet
movie
is
at the
really
top,
cool.
Yeah, our movie at the top, Goldfinger, also has a completely irrelevant but cool prologue.
Yeah.
But all the same, like let's just say, regardless of its weight on the plot, what do you guys think of this opening?
So just a backstory on the opening, they originally wanted to use this plane in Moonraker, and then they decided to scrap that idea.
What were they going to do?
They were going to use this plane. I don't know exactly what they were going to do with it, but they originally wanted to do this plane for Moonraker, and then they decided, if I'm remembering correctly, what was Moonraker's opening? Because I forgot. Oh, it was Jaws
The
falling into the circus.
Parachute. Yeah. Jaws, cock in your face. How
That's
could you
right.
forget that?
Well, good thing it just blanked my memory. But it's fun to watch that because the sequence, if you watch carefully, they attach a version of that plane to a car with a pole, but then they put all that stuff and all those people in the way so you can't tell there's a car pulling the jet through.
It looks a little silly.
It's definitely slower than it was.
Speed-wise,
Yeah, but whatever. I mean, that moment is so...
It's still cool.
Because again, like the parachute opening, you've got this ultra high-speed ship with the British flag painted on it. We also have a hot air balloon with the same treatment, but forget about that for now. Bond gets caught in his mission. He can't achieve it. He's supposed to blow up this base, and then he still manages to pull it off and escape at the same time. I'm always... Every time he's flying off and the place is exploding, for me, it feels like the parachute opening again. And I'm like, yeah.
The thing that ruins it for me, though, is that he lands and then he pulls up to a gas station.
Does that ruin it, though?
Yeah, it does.
I
would have rather it ended with him flying off and then with the Bond theme going full blast. But more is like, let's put a joke here.
Fill her up, please.
Yeah, that's when the producers go, but Roger's hilarious and everybody loves him. And because the more I watch the Roger Moore movies, and then I'm editing these videos, and when people talk about the Roger Moore Bond movies are just trash, that's what I'm like. I get what you mean. Wouldn't it be great if we had every movie like Casino or whatever? But at the same time, do you really want that? I think if you can't enjoy these movies, goofy or otherwise, I think your soul might be dead. I think you might have a joyless existence if you can't appreciate the absurdity and the fun of Roger Moore. And we've argued endlessly about the goofy versus the serious, and it's which I want to bring up on that note. There is a difference between goofy and stupid, and we've kind of been dancing around that idea where with Moonraker, we called a lot of stuff goofy, but some of it went into the realm of just stupid. Like the gondola scene is purposeless and stupid and not really even enjoyable. It's not something you really look forward to in watching that movie. That's in the realm of stupid, and then goofy is something else entirely. So my whole point is that, going forward, it's I'm going to try to parse out goofy from stupid because...
There's definitely stupid goofy in this movie, too, though.
Oh, yeah.
Not as bad as the slide whistle. The slide whistle still wins.
But I would say that moment is definitely this movie's slide whistle.
Yeah,
for sure. The one moment in the movie where you're like, is that a good choice?
Yeah, this movie has stupid in spades, in my opinion.
Damn.
Okay.
There's a lot. There's a lot that was just too much.
What was your peak stupid?
Well, he's got a cat, racket. So probably telling the tiger to sit.
Sit.
Yeah, telling a tiger to sit.
Not just sit. Sit. It's like he nailed that T.
Yeah.
And then immediately telling a snake to hiss off.
The very first thing is that he walks into a tarantula's nest. He walks into Halloween store.
It reminds me of
cobwebs.
Is it Kung Pao Enter the Fist where it's a tiny net and he's like, ugh. It's like a 2x2 net.
I will say my least favorite part of this movie is most of the India sequences, and mainly because it feels like the writers
I enjoyed the what's it called? What's that taxi thing? I liked all of that.
It feels like they wrote every single cliche in that part of the movie about India, where you have the tarantulas, you have the elephants, you have the tiger scene,
fire walking, you have a guy laying on
the nail
spikes.
bed, the sword swallower,
all that stuff, and it was like, let's put all of that in this one sequence. And that was the part of the movie where I'm like, this. I
actually enjoyed that part myself.
Okay, when it comes to the India stuff, I get it that they really are jam packing a whole bunch, and I've never been there. I don't know anything about India other than what is programmed into my brain by the mass media. But that being said, these are cultural things. I don't know. I mean, if you go to India today, I don't know if you walk around and people are swallowing swords. I honestly don't know. But there is a history of that. I I went on YouTube, and I'll remind you that we're talking about, in the same way that when we were talking about why are they spending so much time on the Japanese wedding and you only live twice? It's like, well, because it's interesting. How many people have actually been to Japan?
Yeah.
Not that many in Western audiences. So you go to these exotic lands, especially in a franchise like James Bond, and as producers, you're going through and you're like, look at all this cool shit. Oh man, like write that down, right? Let's put that in. In a time where people don't have YouTube, and you do kind of, I mean, there are so many idiots today who would be like, wow, this is racism. This is right. Not all Indian people lay on nail beds, but it's like, but there is a history of that. And if you go to YouTube, you can watch Indian sword swallowers of today, Guinness Book of World Records, dude. You can watch a dozen guys laying on nail beds on top of each other. So like these things
Snake
exist.
Charming. I mean,
you can look up
of that's there,
stuffed sheep's head.
Stuffed sheep's head.
You can find pictures of this stuff online. So, but I get what you're saying, that there's so much of it. And then when it comes to so that stuff I think is fine. Again, I've never been to India. A third of our audience is from India. Yeah. Please comment below if I'm full of shit. If you're offended, if you're not offended, if you like it, if you don't like it, like please report back. Because again, I don't think any of us have been there, but it's certainly interesting. It's just at a certain point, the chase on the tuk-tuks, you said they're called, that chase is fun.
Yeah, I liked it.
I like that chase. India is always represented as being crazy colorful to the point where I'm like, that must be real. Every movie about India has this rainbow of colors, but where it really goes south for me is obviously the hunting scene, because that's where they fit all the stupidity into like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Except for the fact that it ends with a fantastic line. I love "Are you part of our group?" And he's like,
I'm fine.
Are you with our group?
No, ma'am, I'm with the economy tour.
"No, bitch." So Scott, the tennis racket, why does that bug you?
It's how they purposed it all. It's like you said, no, all of that stuff exists in India in some form or fashion. In the tourist districts, that stuff still does happen. There is snake charming. There are guys laying on beds of needles. There is fire walking. There's fire blowing. There's sword swallowers, etc. It's just purposing it all as they did in such a quick scene just to make it seem so ridiculous is just, it didn't sit well with me. And I'm sorry, the tennis racket, like why the fuck does a I guess Secret Service agent have a tennis racket as his weapon in the first place? And I get it because he's a tennis player.
Tennis? I play a bit myself.
But then he's just swinging at a guy with a massive sword and somehow winning, and then just the sounds, and then the crowd going.
Before that scene, the character says he plays tennis. He said something about his backhand or something.
It's as much as that scene is fun to watch, it is very cartoony, and I do wonder if John Glen, because at this point, I think the director, I mean, his last film, we kind of also got a anti-Bond car scene where Bond's driving in a vehicle of the area, but it's not a sports car, it's not a souped-up car. And then this movie, we get the equivalent to that, and then now he's in an Indian taxi, which is pretty much like a motorcycle attached to 2 extra wheels, and pretty much
a tri-wheel.
It's basically like a motorcycle, right?
Basically, yeah.
That's. And so it's like, okay, cabin. we get a different kind of thing, and it's goofy.
It's like a golf cart without one wheel, basically.
Before I forget to mention this, so during that scene, there's a guy on a bicycle that rides right between 2 of the cars. The guy on the bicycle was not a part of the production. They didn't know who that guy was.
I can believe that.
Trying to get to work.
If you watch, he had no idea what was going on. The guy, bikes right between those 2 vehicles going at high speeds. He probably could have gotten clipped or hurt, but they kept it in the movie.
That's awesome. You like the tuk-tuk chase, but you don't like a bunch of the cramming the "this is India" stuff. I love all of it. I don't know why. In the past, I've been against this sort of thing, but this movie, I actually really enjoyed it. I liked that we were in India, somewhere we hadn't been before.
Yeah.
Some of the movies had started to recycle, and it was refreshing to be somewhere new and different. And then, I liked everything about the tuk-tuk chase, and I was not bothered by the all the like the obvious like we're in India type of stuff. I don't. Maybe it was the clown chase at the beginning, or maybe I'm just getting used to like suspending my goofiness disbelief with the Bond films. But I'm like
I was saying, you gotta be
it.
willing to have fun.
Yeah,
Otherwise, you know,
exactly.
again, these people that are like, everything Roger Moore touches is garbage. It's like,
Yeah, so
That might
I think
be a
I did
you
a better
problem.
job of
there's
being
there's a
open
lot of goofy stuff in this
time.
film that I enjoy, but there's a lot of parts that I think just go too far.
Mm.
And I'm sorry, the tennis scene with the sounds and the crowd going like that is right up there with the fucking double take pigeon.
Yeah,
yeah,
I
for
forgot
sure.
about that. Yeah,
Yeah.
For some
So
reason,
do
I was
not
okay
tell
with
me
it.
this one is better than a
I was
fucking
okay
pigeon
with
going
it.
like a crowd of Indian people hearing
It's
tennis
not as bad as
sounds.
a pigeon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Scott, let me just follow up what you were saying though. You're saying that it's not so much that the guy has a tennis racket, because it was pointed out explicitly.
No.
I'm a pro. That he should have a racket. It's the fact that even though the guy might have a tennis racket in the tuk-tuk with him because that's what he does, he should also have some kind of MI6 weapon too
Something.
that's a little bit
Yeah.
more effective, something that maybe shoots bullets.
Did Goodnight have a gun?
Goodnight never fired a gun.
Do
She
those
used a
type of
wrench.
people? I don't feel like they usually have a gun.
They're definitely not
Maybe
licensed
not.
to kill.
They're more like taxi drivers. I guess in this movie, he's also filling the role of masseuse to Bond because he's
Yeah.
like rubbing his shoulders at some point.
Yeah.
Got a little bit of everything.
Well, that's a good question. Is that these Bond allies? How often? I mean, obviously, none of them are licensed to kill. Are they licensed to defend their lives? Like why not give them a gun so that they can use it in self-defense, not murder people in cold blood like we've watched Bond do from time to time?
And you've had your 6.
If you're gonna work for MI6, you're probably gonna have defensive weapons in some regard, but
You'd
he's
hope.
got They're like, no, fuck you. You're good enough at tennis. You're just gonna use that fucking racket, okay?
Yeah.
Q, can you put like a gun in the racket? No.
With the tuk-tuk, he's like, oh, God, we have company. He's like, well, this is a company car.
It's a fantastic
He's
line.
doing
It's
wheelies the
fantastic.
whole time.
I love it.
BJ, we have company.
No problem. This is a company car.
They just boosted the horsepower. That's all they did to the fucking thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because Bond's like, use the oil slick.
Yeah.
Use the mines.
Nope, it's just horsepower.
Pop their tires with a laser, and he's like,
I could have taken it in parts. If it was dumbed down just a little bit, I think it would have been great. It's just everything all at once. It was just a bit too much.
James Bond using disguises. I can tell you just because I'm reading from Russia with Love right now. The Russians are reading Bond's dossier, and it says explicitly that James Bond never uses disguises. It's just something he doesn't do, and we've never seen him in a disguise up till this point. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in this one, it starts innocently enough with a little mustache, and then it progresses very quickly
Just a
from there.
mustache.
It goes from a mustache to the knife twin outfit. Then it moves up to a monkey suit, and then ultimately in a clown outfit, which, again, I know a lot of people have trouble with, but I'll say right now that, I think anything's going to be a little easier as a kid. Watching these movies as a kid, I never thought of it twice. Again, Patterson said in the previous episode, Bond in a kilt is almost as bad as Bond in a clown outfit, and that's where I'll correct myself. Like, yes, okay, we've seen Bond pretend to be other people, and he dresses up and all that, but like, he never puts anything on his face. But like the clown thing is what most people would say is awful, but it makes sense in the moment. The only thing that doesn't make sense is that with 5 minutes to go on the bomb, Bond meticulously puts a ton of like really well applied makeup on his face. But if you look at other clowns, some of them just have eye stuff, like they just have a little bit. But Bond spends about 20 minutes worth of makeup time, even though he has 5 minutes. And that's, honestly, I can look the other way because that gets him in, right? Like, who's going to question a clown running into a circus? It works. But what I like even more about it is once he gets past that tier, Now he has to convince the base leader that he's not a crazy person.
General, there's a bomb in that cannon.
Sure, where else would a bomb be? Great clown, man.
I'm deadly serious. I'm a British agent.
What?
For God's sake, tell him who I am.
That whole bomb ending really works for me. And not only because it's a ticking clock, and those are generally fun. We've had a lot of them. But with this, what we've seen before is a ticking clock, and it's just a countdown thing, and it just stops. But they even have that nice little detail of Bond pulls out the detonator, and you see it go off. That's so much more satisfying than just a ticker stopping, a time code just ceasing. So the clown thing just works for me in that regard.
Yeah, I agree. I actually enjoyed the ending. I'm actually opposite of Nans somewhat in that I think this movie started terribly for me. I hate the song. I did not enjoy the 00, the first clown scene. Like I said, it just didn't seem like
what about
00
the prologue?
agent. The prologue was all right. I liked the plane. I liked the plane scene. As soon as they fired the missile, was it not kind of predictable that he was going to take that missile back into the hangar to finish the job because he didn't finish it?
Still fun and exciting, and I love
but
it.
Yeah, no, I didn't mind the prologue. The prologue was cool. I hate the song.
Before you get to the song, though, what's a better prologue, Roger Moore wise? What's a better prologue than this? And I know I talked up Scaramanga. Like, I love the opening to Man with the Golden Gun, but that doesn't have Bond in it. It has a mannequin of Bond.
I think The Spy Who Loved Me is by far the best one. It not only sets up the plot in the movie, but it also sets up his relationship with his foil in the film, as well as his ally. So
Okay. Let me ask again, though. If you remove it being, because I agree that it sets up that story in a great manner, but if you remove that, if it's just based on like excitement, and I agree that the opening of the parachute is great, but all the same, straight up just Bond action fun.
Well, I was going to say, I also enjoyed Moonraker outside of just the terrible Jaws body double and the flapping, but the rest of the intro is pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying I dislike this prologue. I never said that. I don't like everything else.
You better not.
I did not like the clown scene. I was not a big fan of that. I do not like the song. I did not like the song intro either.
Yeah. Okay. So song-wise, what's your...
It's terrible.
Yeah.
It's just not...
I mean, I agree.
There's
but...
no purpose for this song. It doesn't tie back to the movie at all.
Well,
yeah.
Try to make a song titled Octopussy.
Well, again, did you try to write an original song for Octopussy? I imagine it's extremely difficult. I did think, though, that because of the Barbara Bach connection to Ringo Starr, that they should have brought him in to sing Octopussy's Garden, which... for any Beatle fans out there, I would love to make that fan edit right now, but the moment you use a Beatles song, they just torch your fucking video. But Octopussy's Garden...
well, they could have done, like, something like Man with the Golden Gun, like, she's the woman with the 8 pussies.
Which one to fuck?
No, I don't know. It just didn't seem well placed.
Yeah,
and it's one of the...
Nobody Does It Better would have, like, again, The Spy Who Loved Me, that's actually a lyric from the song Nobody Does It Better, and it kind of needed that style. If you're not going to use the title in the song, then just you need to just kick out the jams, bruv. And with this, it's
definitely one of the weaker songs in the franchise by far.
Do you think because they knew that All Time High was just a subpar song, that's why there's so much nudity in the title sequence?
Yeah, they
like a
definitely went
remarkable
overboard.
amount of big titty chicks in silhouette flopping around.
Maybe.
It's
That's all
astounding.
they could muster.
John Barry comes back to do the music, and then it's like the one thing that John Barry does in this movie, at least, is they play up the Bond theme as much as they can, because they know that the other movie coming out does not have the James Bond theme. So they're like, well, we got to put the Bond theme in every chance we get.
Oh, I love when they threw the Bond theme in with the snake charming.
a charming tune. You do take English money.
Only gold sovereigns.
Oh,
Like to get his attention.
Yeah,
that was cool.
That's cool.
I
makes
and
sense.
I like stuff
Stupid.
like that too because you could. It's not just
It's
a nod
fine.
to the
McCurdy
audience.
disagrees.
You could believe that because Bond's always given code words, right? Like
Kerim Bey sent a car for you, sir.
Oh, fine. Can I borrow a match?
I use a lighter
It's better still.
until they go wrong.
Exactly.
I'll get the car, sir.
In London, April's a spring month.
Oh, yeah? What are you, the weatherman? If for crying out loud, another stiff-ass Brit. Your secret codes and your passwords.
And so it's like you're going to go to this place, and when you hear this tune, and so you can kind of believe that maybe that was not just a nod to the audience. There's a reason he goes to VJ. You could maybe believe that they were like, you're going to go to this market, this guy's going to play this tune, and you're going to go to that guy, and you're going to say, hey, do you take whatever? And he's going to say only gold sovereigns because that's their code that they're supposed to share. And that means you're MI6. Hey, I'm MI6.
Was it you guys? Was it diegetic and non-diegetic?
Yeah.
Like so is Bond aware that he's had a theme song this whole time?
That would be non-diegetic becoming diegetic.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It kind of rolls in that reality of how does Tiffany Case know who James Bond is?
Which
Yeah.
that is stupid. That is stupid.
It's a scene for me that doesn't completely kill the movie, but it is one that I just kind of go, eh. Like Charlie was bringing up, is that the clown moment for it, almost like anybody who talks about James Bond, like they will always bring up, they'll talk about, well, Roger Moore movies were goofy, and then they'll bring up a clip of Octopussy when he's in a clown outfit.
Mm-hmm.
But like out of context, it's like
It's a
Charlie
little unfair.
said, it's super unfair because that whole
Yeah.
That's espionage.
I don't like the
That's
Indians.
spy work.
The stuff in India is not my favorite in the movie, but once they go to East Berlin, from the moment where the timer starts to when he is racing from the train, gets into the other car, has to get into another car, gets there, has to get into the clown outfit, which is a little weird, but like all of that entire sequence with a ticking clock behind it, like that whole sequence is probably my favorite part of this movie, even up to the
absolutely.
point where he's in the
Agreed.
clown outfit. Like I love that part of the movie. The only thing that I hate about this movie, like the other part I hate about this movie is it like completely undercuts it after the fact. They're like,
Thank you very much. You did a great job, sir.
Where was Kamal going? Back to India.
and then they have this really shitty ending that I'm like, they had like a really great ending there. And then they had to tack on this kind of like lackluster commando thing / Bonds in a hot air balloon / save Octopussy for some reason thing, and it just
loves her.
It doesn't work.
He loves her.
It doesn't work.
He's
for me.
responsible for her father being dead.
Yeah.
And she has daddy issues, which
And, like,
means
that's-
she's sexually loose when Bond's around.
But yeah,
He loves her.
The whole sequence up to that point is great. That whole scene, that whole thing is the stunts, even like him climbing the train. That's incredible. That whole sequence is amazing. Because I mean, I was thinking about it as we're watching it. I'm like, we've seen like 4 train sequences up to this point, I think, in the movies, and each of them take place inside the train, but they never take place outside of the train. The car chase is great.
Well, let me say on that note, with the car chase, it's our first car chase where Bond isn't just trying to, correct me if I'm wrong, he's not just trying to escape.
No,
he's
he's
trying
not
to
escaping.
get
Catch up.
somewhere.
Yeah.
He's trying to get somewhere as quickly as possible, and the bad guy is going the opposite direction.
That was Bond.
Good. Let him keep going. He'll be late, and we'll be rid of him, too.
Yeah.
And then it's just the police that are on his tail, but
Yeah.
it's Bond has to get somewhere really quick rather than just get away.
But it's 2 multiple car chases, remember? Because he has the Mercedes-Benz that has the jewels in it.
Yeah.
That scene's goofy where, it gets on the train tracks and...
I like that.
Did you like it, Scott? Because it's like Top Gear?
Yeah, well, but it's smart. Yeah, if your tires are going to get popped, get on rail tracks.
I love that, like, the train almost hits him right as he's getting onto the next train.
Yeah.
And then,
Like, okay, let me just say, I think that, I mean, that part has always stuck with me, the fact that his tires get popped and then he pulls onto a train track. And I'm sure some engineer Scott's an engineer.
I'm sure
can
the width
tell
isn't
me
the same,
that
but-
the width isn't the same. Yeah, that the measurements would be off, but
it
all the
wouldn't
same.
work. It would just
But all the
slide.
same,
Maybe
when you
there's
lose
different
your
trains,
tires and you just have those rims, they technically would ride pretty well on a train track, provided there's proper width. But I still have always thought that if you can just forget about that little detail, it's really clever. And it's more than just a sight gag. Again, let me go back through our sight gags. We have the car plane that McCurdy and I disagree to our deaths about, where he thinks it's just a sight gag and I think it's a character moment. But then we have Gondola, which is strictly just a shitty sight
That's
gag
the
that
worst
is
one.
just stupid and awful. And then you have this, which is it makes more than just pigeons do double takes. Like, oh my God, it's just such a cool way. It's like, okay, Bond's in a car. How do we get Bond to the train? Well, how about he pops his tires and he just rides on the rims? If you could just forget about like the width being off, it's really clever. I think it's fantastic. And then they just do it briefly enough to where you have, like McCurdy said, you have that quick moment of him like, and he's got to, like, you have to jump now. And
what
he jumps,
loses me, like, what freaks me out every time I watch that, though, is that not only does he jump onto the other train, but if you watch when the Mercedes-Benz gets hit by the other train, it flies in the air. And then when you watch the scene, the Mercedes-Benz flies into the air and, like, hits the boat of the two fishermen, who are probably stuntmen. But it always freaks me out because that fucking car could have landed on either of them.
Oh,
it does.
Close.
It basically
close.
lands on one of them. Like if you watch in slow-mo, one guy jumps off and his momentum on the boat completely fucks over the other stunt guy.
Yeah,
Like the other stunt
way
guy
that
gets
would work.
fucked up. Like for sure. And then you
freaks me
see the
out a
two of
little
them
bit.
swimming.
And you actually hear somebody, you hear somebody go like audibly. There's like an audible, almost like a Jesus Christ. Like, get to this guy.
Jesus Christ, look out!
I think it was definitely an accident. Hopefully nobody was seriously injured.
But I mean, like, it's like you have that moment. Everything on the train is great. Him, like trying to get to the front of the train. I can't not help but think that like Tom Cruise watched this one in particular a lot for the first Mission Impossible.
For sure.
Stunt.
You know, everything
With
on
that
top
plane?
of the train, even the plane sequence.
Oh yeah.
And so then there's the chase on the plane, or on the train, not the plane. What am I saying? On the train.
No planes, no trains.
No plane, no train.
No heroin.
No heroin. And then he jumps off with the sword guy through the woods, kills the knife guy.
Do you guys ever feel bad for those brothers?
No.
Like when he pops up and he's like Grishka or Grishka. Like I kind of feel a little
Grishka and
bad for
Mishka.
him, but then the moment Bond murks him and he's brutally murders him and he's like, that's the 009. I'm like, oh yeah, they killed 009. F those guys. But when he thinks he sees his brother, and I feel bad for him
Grishka.
just in that moment when he's like, bro,
And then he gets on the worst part is like he has to hitchhike, gets in with a German family, and then steals the car.
They're just like eating sausages.
He has to steal that car. Like
beer.
Mein Auto.
That whole sequence is just built on top of like, is he gonna make it? Is he gonna make it? Is he gonna make it? And it puts me on the edge of my seat, and it's a very long sequence too.
My favorite shot of that sequence, though, is what sparks it off. He just watched them set the timer, right? And for some reason, he's moving around while he's in the gorilla suit, like whatever. But he makes a little noise. But I love the shot when Turban Guy grabs the sword and he chops the head off. And by chopping the head off, that reveals Bond. Like it's a great little director call in that moment. Chops the head off, reveals Bond, and then Bond immediately escapes. Like it's like a cool. It communicates a whole lot in like a second. It's a nice shot.
Yeah.
The only wasted part about all of that is if Bond had somehow like launched Mishka's body from the cannon that he hit him into like at the enemies to like get away or like hide or something.
He puts the body in the cannon. Later on, someone looks in the cannon and acts like no one's in there.
But
It's
there's
just like,
two cannons.
There's two
There's
cannons.
two cannons.
So it's a
That's
different
what's so weird. And I'll get to that because I meticulously wrote out beat by beat the smuggling operation because it's so fucking confusing. So I'm gonna go for a while. It's like a long fucking deal. So bear with me. Okay, so we have our little intro of Orlov, which I gotta say, General Orlov is awesome. I just want to say off the bat, our two
I like their head
prime
rubbing
bad
for
guys.
some reason.
Yeah, exactly. General Orlov and Kamal Khan they're both so weird and flamboyant. They're textbook fun bad guys. Every line they deliver is delicious. I know that's a weird word to use.
Yeah.
But everything's so flamboyant and over the top. You know, these timid,
outdated, and unrealistic policies. Must I remind you, the committee, of our overwhelming superiority over NATO forces before we give it away?
Of course. You can only win with a double six. The stake is 200,000 rupees. Do you have the cash?
So Orlov introduces himself with a whole scene where he's like, you know, he's a young general. He's like, all the other generals are old. They've lost their way. We should take over Europe and then, you know, probably the world or whatever. He just establishes right away that he's a bit of a radical and that the rest of Russia is against him. Like McCurdy said in the past, they don't want to make Russia exclusively the bad guy. This is how they do it. They have a radical general rather than all the generals wanting to take over the West. Explicitly, we have Gogol, who's like, you're a madman. And, you know, so Orlov is a black sheep.
I see no reason to risk war to satisfy your personal paranoia and thirst for conquest.
Anyway, General Orlov, in order to fulfill his goal of taking over the West, is replacing famous Russian jewels with fakes and then selling the originals in the West. And he's using this circus run by Octopussy to smuggle them. So Mishka and Grishka are obviously Russians, and they're the connection to Octopussy's circus that travels between the East and the West. The egg was in East Berlin when 009 got a hold of it. They were smuggling the fake egg into Russia via the circus.
The reproduction has been stolen in transit. The thief was dealt with, but the egg was lost in the river.
They were going to put it in the Kremlin art repository because as they're stealing these jewels, they need to replace them with fakes. So that, because when, like, whatever managers or whatever come around, they need to see that all the jewels are still there.
We'll have a replacement made.
There is no time, Comrade General. I have just been informed of an unscheduled inventory in 2 days.
Control yourself, Lincoln. I'll tell our people in London we must have the genuine egg back.
And so we get the fake egg from 009.
A near-perfect forgery.
If it is the Russians, it could be an effort to raise currency. The covert operations abroad are for payoffs.
So that's like our initial, you know, hypothesis is that the Russians are trying to raise money for something devious, and Bond, you got to go figure this out. So Kamal Khan is just a broker. The MI6 art expert says Kamal usually sells things from their kind of shoddy stuff from dubious sources.
You know it. Kamal Khan. Usually a seller.
360.
Marginal quality from dubious sources.
So we know right away that Khan is just kind of a con artist. But we find out later that the pieces are forged in India.
Each piece has been meticulously duplicated according to Lenkin's specifications.
So they're being faked in India based off of specifications sent from Moscow and then smuggling them into Russia while the real ones are being smuggled out of Russia. And this is all being done by Octopussy's circus. I keep wanting to say Octopussy's garden. God damn it. And Orlov's like, great, these look like the real thing. Load them on the helicopter. And then he's holding the real egg. Because remember, Bond switched out the real egg with the fake egg recovered from 009.
Here's the original. I switched it with the fake during the auction. This Kamal usually sells. Now he buys. I believe that the fake will smoke him out.
So Bond has the real egg. And he's going to use the real egg to, quote, smoke out Kamal Khan. So later when blonde chick steals
Magda?
the egg from Bond, Magna?
Khan's like the girl that is there with Khan.
My little Octopussy.
The one with the tattoo of Octopussy?
Yeah.
That's Magda.
Magda. Okay, so
I'm looking at the IMDb.
Magda steals the real egg, and then Kamal Khan takes the real egg to Octopussy, and he's like, hey, look, I got the real egg. And then Orlov shows up.
So, you recovered it.
And then he's like, this fake egg has caused a lot of trouble, and then he breaks it.
There must be no further security breach. This fake has caused enough trouble.
But the one he breaks has the microphone/tracker in it that Q planted, meaning that that was the real egg. So why didn't Kamal Khan stop him from breaking the real egg? And this is what I mean. Even Kamal Khan and Orlov can't keep track of what's real and what's fake. The audience can hardly keep track, but even the characters in the fucking movie can't keep track of what's real and what's fake. He breaks the real egg. But even if it was a fake egg, why not break it? Why break it? He's like, this egg's caused trouble. Well, yeah, because somebody stole it. Why would you break the egg? That thing's worth money. Like, anyway. So, moving forward. And then on that note, that action of breaking the egg is only done so that Kamal Khan will spot the tracker/microphone, even though the tracker/microphone just looks like another piece of jewelry from the egg itself. And then that leads him to be like, go get Bond, which doesn't make sense because they were going to just retrieve Bond and torture him anyway. Like, doesn't make sense. And then Orlov then takes the canister of fake jewelry back to Moscow. And then later on, the forgers are killed for some reason. Like, were they going to call Moscow or something? Whatever the fuck. Again, this is too complicated.
I get what I want, then you get the genuine jewelry.
Orlov just wants to smuggle a bomb into West Berlin. As I said in my intro, it doesn't really make sense why they couldn't just smuggle a bomb in rather than dealing with this whole jewelry thing in the first place. Again, fucking moving forward. Orlov swaps out the fake jewels with the real jewels. We never see him do this, but we know that they were swapped because there's that scene where, they have the art expert that's like, here's the... Oh, I thought that was Scott.
It's Whiskey.
Scott's cat is named Whiskey. Hada! Hada!
Whiskey.
Oh my God.
Whiskey!
I don't think she can hear it.
So anyway, we have that scene where the art expert is like, hey, the Romanov star is a fake.
The Romanov star.
The Romanov star.
And then he takes him to the circus where they're like...
The jewelry should net us 300 million in Zurich.
So Octopussy's like, great, we're smuggling these real jewels through and we're going to sell them in the West. But to put one over on Octopussy, they have an identical train car with a nuclear bomb. Even though all they had to do was take out the jewelry canister and replace it with the bomb, they went through the trouble of creating an entirely identical train car with a cannon and a bunch of costumes in there, even though all they had to do was be in that tunnel and take out the jewelry and then put in a bomb. Like, who were they trying to trick? They're just trying to trick Octopussy. Well, she's not there. So, like, why go through all this massive effort? Why steal the jewelry in the first place? If you're just going to swap it out with a bomb anyway, why not use the fake jewelry to be like, hey, Octopussy, look at all this great jewelry, and then just swap in the bomb? Like, why go through weeks and weeks of all this elaborate shit if you're just going to swap it out for a bomb anyway? But again, fucking moving forward. Bond then grabs the Romanov star once he, steals the jewelry, because Bond's smart. He knows he's going to need to prove it to somebody. Then Orlov takes the real jewelry, puts it in his car. Well, I thought Kamal Khan was going to take that. Was he going to give it to Khan later? Whatever, moving forward. So then...
There was a firefight!
Bond steals Orlov's car.
Follow that car.
Which he then crashes in the river, which then Gogol fishes out, and he recovers the real jewelry. So then he's on to Orlov.
Where is General Orlov now?
He was last reported heading towards the border.
So then Orlov is desperately trying to get to the train for some reason.
I must get to that train!
His job is done. He smuggled a nuke onto the train, The train's going to drive into West Berlin and it's going to detonate, and he's going to be a hero and all that.
I shall be a hero.
So why is Orlov trying to get to the train? Doesn't he know that that's the train with the bomb on it? And then why do his own men shoot it? Do they think he's defecting? He's in uniform. Are they like, oh, defector, kill him? You know.
That wasn't his own men, though. That was the border guards.
They were Russians, though.
No.
Yeah, because they're on the east side. That wasn't the west side.
Well, did Gogol order them to shoot him?
No, they just shot him because he's like, that's the thing. Why is he trying to get to the train? What is on the train that he needs to get? His job is done. He doesn't need to get to the train anymore. It's like, if anything, he wants to get the fuck away from the train because it has a goddamn nuke that he knows is going to explode on it. Obviously, he's in pursuit of Bond, and Bond is a threat to the bomb itself, but the bomb is protected by Mishka and Grishka and Turban Guy. But that's not even true, because Mishka stayed behind while the rest of the train left. So, like, was he going to catch up after he took the jewelry out?
Leave that. Let's go.
Let's stay.
What if he didn't make it, and then who was going to throw knives at Grishka? So, I don't know. I mean, is his warning about Bond worth his pursuit and then his death? Plus, he's a general. I don't know. Can he not radio ahead and have them just hold the train at the border for 5 minutes? Again, moving forward. So, then Bond gives Octopussy the Romanov star as proof. So then Octopussy helps Bond to defuse the bomb, and jewelry plot done. So as Bond puts together, this is all done so that there will be further disarmament across Europe so that Orlov can then invade.
What happens when the U.S. retaliates?
Against whom?
Thank God, of course. Our early warning system will rule out the possibility of that bomb having been launched from Russia or anywhere else.
100 kiloton yield. The effects are indistinguishable from the American medium yield bomb.
Everyone will assume incorrectly that it was an American bomb triggered accidentally.
That would be the most plausible explanation.
Europe will insist on unilateral disarmament, leaving every border undefended for you to walk across at will.
But is the invasion up to him in the first place? You know, are all the other generals just going to like countermand him and say like no, we're not going to invade?
Or something.
Exactly. So why was the jewelry necessary in the first place? I thought they were just selling these pieces to raise money, but what did they ever use any of the money for? We never see that. What did they do with the money? Buy the bomb? Was it going to finance a coup? Was it going to finance the invasion? But the bomb came from the Russians, right? So did this need to be so elaborate? Why not just swap out the cannon train car with an identical car with a bomb loaded on it? Why the elaborate smuggling scheme? Why not just swap one car with another? One was a normal cannon. Now the new one has a bomb on it. Why do any of this jewelry stuff at all? Why raise any money? Did we see any of the money get spent? I could go fucking crazy asking a million fucking questions about this goddamn movie. None of it makes any fucking sense. But all the same, I still think it's a good movie.
And Kamal Khan's in it just for the money, right? He doesn't care what Orlov is doing.
No.
During the final like circus invasion of his palace or whatever, we see he has printing plates for like money.
We'll take these also. Dollars, pounds, francs, marks. I can always print my own.
Out of nowhere.
So can he not just print money, or is the jewelry maybe part of a laundering scheme for the money he prints?
Where did he get the plates to print money? He's like,
at
by
the
end
way,
of the
I
movie,
can
he's
just print money. Like,
yeah, hey, turns out we don't need any of this jewelry anyway because we can just print money.
We can make millions.
What?
You're making me hate this movie more. You know that, right?
Where'd you get the plates, asshole? Like, oh, we bought those plates with the money we made from smuggling the jewelry. Like, you'd be like, oh, that makes sense, but
it was terribly over convoluted, but part of it,
to say the
part of it
least.
actually brought the villain plot back for me, because if it only ended at smuggling jewelry to finance a war of some kind, I'm like, that's the worst Bond villain plot ever. But
It's not enough
when it
money
was
either.
escalated to when it was escalated
$300 million.
Can't even buy a tank.
we could buy one engine for one plane.
Yeah.
But what brought it back was the villainous plot to switch it out, use the bomb, which the bomb would then register as a U.S. signature bomb, so they wouldn't be able to track it. So then they would think it was an accident within the base, which would then cause the UN to cause like a unilateral disarmament.
Unilateral nuclear disarmament.
That's the only part that I was like, okay, that's kind of clever. And then that would probably
Makes
make
sense.
his plan to invade everywhere else more feasible, maybe to convince the rest of Russia. Like you said, Charlie, it's still not his decision. So like, sure, the UN unilateral disarmament is great, but how's he going to
convince all these other guys, hey, now's the time to invade?
But it at least
none of them wanna
escalated
invade?
it to a point where I'm like, okay, that is a Bond villain plot, a nuclear device that causes, the UN to go into disarray to create an advancement for war more easy. That made it better. But if it stayed at just smuggling jewelry, gold, diamonds, and to fund a war, at which, like Nan said, at what scale? Like the level of funding necessary is way above what you'd have to, especially when one of your prime objects is an egg that sells for supposedly 300,000.
Half £1,000,000. Yeah. I just want to point out the real victim in the room, which is Ryan McCurdy.
I want to hear from McCurdy.
Painful.
Are you doing all right?
You just like made the movie like the worst. The worst movie. I mean,
like I said, it doesn't necessarily ruin it for me.
It's
just
I'm glad
ridiculous.
it wasn't just a case of me being dumb and confused. It is actually bad.
It
was
really
very
stupid.
pointless.
So no, here's my
Because I enjoyed
thoughts.
the movie. I guess I just like
whatever.
It probably makes
Here's my
sense.
thing about it. It's that like
fucking Dolph humanoids are now looking way more
the
realistic.
simplicity of many of the other Bond plots, like, make the movies enjoyable because I don't have to think about it, and it's just very obvious that Bond has to do X, Y, and Z towards the end of the movie. This movie just made this over convoluted plot, which really just reads to me that this movie had 3 writers, by the way. So what happens is you have one guy who writes the original outline, original script of the movie. Then you have 2 other guys who come back and they're like, well, wait, we want to add this element to it or fix this part of the script. How do we do that?
Now those jewels are fake. Before they were real, now they're fake, and then nobody can keep track of what's real and what's fake.
And also you have executive producer Michael G. Wilson is also attached to the script. So it makes me wonder, does Michael G. Wilson like to write these very convoluted plots, which sounds like it would make the movies better?
Well, remember what he wrote. He wrote For Your Eyes Only, which also had us like, what's happening, what's going on,
yeah,
who's
but
bad,
For Your
who's
Eyes
good.
Only has a convoluted plot as well, but that one's a little bit cleaner. There's more of a revenge story and stuff in that one. This one, on the other hand, is like this trying to tie 2 different Bond stories together, because they took another one called Property of a Lady, which you see it in the marquee for the Fabergé egg.
Property of a Lady.
That's one of the Bond short stories that never was made into an actual film, of course. So they took that story, and then they took the story for Octopussy and tried to like mesh those two elements of those 2 stories together. And it doesn't help the movie, but I will say this, the spectacle of the movie at least outweighs that. Like, again, the train sequence, that whole part of it is great.
All you need to know, even with all that shit being super complicated and maybe pointless, all you need to know is there's a bomb on the train in this cannon, and James has to go get it.
Yeah.
Scott, like you said, like the bomb plot helps the movie.
It at least takes it up a notch,
It's kind of like how in Goldfinger, when he's like, I'm going to blow up all the gold because now all my gold's going to be worth way more money.
Yeah,
it's like that kind of twist where it's like, okay, now I see why this is great.
Now it's a Bond level plot, not just smuggling.
I apologize, Goldfinger. It's an inspired deal.
If I was trying to rank this movie, like the things that work really well for this movie are general spectacle. Like there's a lot of really great stunt sequences in this film. I don't think you see a single ragdoll in this movie, which is great. you know, we talked about the train sequence and all that stuff.
It's also violent as
Bond shooting people right in the face.
Ripping off headshots left and right.
Yeah, this is not a kid's movie like Moonraker.
No. But what ruins this movie for me is I mean, some of the stuff in India ruins it for me. You know, there's the Tarzan stuff. Like, yes, we talked about the double take or the back and forth in India. But also like the end of the movie itself also ruins the movie for me because it's like you had a really great ending with the bomb, and then we have to go back to India with this really lame commando scene. And it's not because they're girls.
I just had an idea on that. Can I, McCurdy? On that note, what if instead of them going and finding Kamal Khan, who's already gotten away, like whatever, let him get away. He's just he's a douchebag anyway. What if instead Kamal Khan tried to kill them in the end? Like, it kind of like in Live and Let Die, where they're on the train and they're getting away, and then they have, or really any Bond movie, right? Where the last assassin tries to kill them. What if Kamal Khan tried to ruin their party because everybody's like, "Hey, you saved Berlin and all that," and then Kamal Khan comes back with Turban Guy and they try to kill him? Like, maybe that would fix what you're talking about. Yeah, rather than going all the way back to India to get vengeance.
But it feels like the laziest ending because it's like, well, now we have to go back and get Kamala Khan, who's really sort of isn't the main villain, but they kind of make it up. Whatever the hell his name is. I don't even care. Kamala Khan. Kamala Harris. We have to go get Kamala Harris, okay?
She needs the plates to print more money.
Every other movie we've had where Bond has to save the girl for some reason, he comes in with like at least some kind of cool vehicle or something. This is a hot air balloon. Like, we got the jet ski.
It's interesting to see Q in the field.
Why did Bond go in separately from the circus crew? Why didn't he go in with Octopussy? Instead, he goes in separately, like, oh, no, I'll catch up and rescue you. If you're going to go after Kamal Khan, or Kamala, if you're going to get Kamala, why not bring the English super spy with you that, by the way, you like f***ing? Why not bring him with you? Like, but instead, it's an excuse to. I mean, and who doesn't want an excuse to bring Q back into the plot, especially a Q who wants to be Eskimo Bros with James Bond.
What are you doing? Cut it out. We haven't time for that. Later, perhaps.
I will say this. Charlie, I'll say this. My favorite moment of that sequence, even though I think that sequence is pretty lame overall, my favorite moment is when Q's like, no, not right now. Okay, maybe later.
Maybe later. Yeah. As he just gets surrounded by women.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
That sequence is made lame specifically because even though you have all these crazy acrobatic circus chicas, they all of their delivery of action is really weak. Like I've pointed out a million times, it's like filmmakers haven't figured out yet how to make women badass. They leave women being badass to the women themselves rather than leaving it to the filmmakers using complicated shot placement and editing and sound effects to make, like, again, Scarlett Johansson look like a badass. Again, it's not to say women can't be badass, but when you just leave it to a woman in a wide shot, and I'm not talking about all women, I'm just talking about this movie in particular, especially when that's my little Octopussy chick. She does that little spin move, and then she's, like, awkwardly kicking. Like, every one of the hits is so weak, and that's what kind of brings it down.
I'll be fair enough to say this though, like shooting any kind of fight sequence in a single wide is tricky. If it's not choreographed well enough, it's going to look bad.
They have a chick who weighs like 90 pounds throwing a punch and a kick, and they don't cut it together correctly to make it look hardcore. Yeah. It comes across as weak. Unfortunately, I'm just the guy pointing out the literal elephant in the room.
After watching that end scene, my first thought was, okay, I wonder how long it takes Charlie to bring this up.
But it's like...
I knew it was coming.
Again, but I'm the guy just pointing out the obvious.
You're right. It's awkwardly cut.
Scott, my wife was sitting in the room while I was watching the movie, and she just was like, what? Are you serious?
Yeah.
Like, this is the end of the movie. I didn't make the movie.
No, I'm
not
disagreeing. I just knew it was coming.
She thought it was also ridiculous. But it's like that, like, this is why, to me, it's like, as much as I want to praise, there's part of me that wants to praise the movie, but there's a part of me that's like, no, this movie has a reason why it's probably one of the weaker ones, but it's at least it's not like the worst weak one that I've seen, but it's just between the
definitely
convoluted
bottom,
plot and some of like just the really dumb decisions, especially the end of the movie, which I feel like was like tacked on because they were like, well, we gotta have more of an ending.
The real climax of the movie is when Bond disarms the bomb.
Yeah.
That's the climax. And then our resolution is like, I got to go after this chick. I do like the plot point with Octopussy where the way Octopussy starts out is she gets the Blofeld treatment. Like straight up, she gets the From Russia with Love Blofeld treatment where we don't see her. We just see her creatures, her iconic aquatic creatures in the
her little octopussy.
We see her little octopussy, and that's where it's as McCurdy's pointed out numerous times. Up to this point, pretty much every scene of a Bond movie is a reference to another Bond movie. But it's fun.
Yeah.
It's now we have this mysterious woman on this island that is populated exclusively by women, as he puts it, sexual discrimination. I'll have to check this out. And if you don't think about Gerudo Valley, you're crazy. But
even the fact that he wakes up, like I know it's not in that area, but the fact that I think about that when he wakes up and he's in the prison after he slept with the girl, I think of that part in Ocarina of Time. I know that's a aside, but
where do we rank the saw blade yo-yo?
That assassin?
As far as weapons.
Do you think his dad was poison string assassin guy? And he's like, fuck you, dad. I don't want to kill people with boring poison. I want to kill them with a yo-yo saw blade. And he's like, no, son, our people have been killing people with poison we've dripped into their mouths for centuries. And he's like, no, I'm special, dad. I'm going to kill him with a yo-yo. It's a saw blade.
It is listed as thug with yo-yo.
Man.
Another weak point for me was Bond's escape from the castle, heading into the hunting scene. His grand escape plan, which you're like, oh, that's clever, man. You know, they're starting their hunting scheme, and he's going to sneak off in a body bag. They take the body bag like 30 feet out the fucking door and just roll him, like they're going to roll him into a pile right next to the hunting party, and you're like, oh, okay. It seems like a clever idea, but then
all he had to do was play dead, and he was golden. But instead, he runs.
It scares him, and then he's right next to the hunting
party. He completely played himself. Yeah.
Hold on, I have a question though. This is one of the things that bugs me about the movie. When Bond is, sneaking around and listening to their plans and everything, he ends up in a room with two other dead bodies, which I don't think the movie ever explains why they're two dead bodies.
They do.
Do they?
Remember what's going on. Orlov shows up. Orlov meets up with Kamal Khan. And he's like, hey, Orlov, look at how awesome this fake jewelry is. And who's walking around in the background? It's those two guys. Those two guys are the forgers. They're the ones who created the fake jewelry. And Orlov says something like,
Can they be trusted? I can assure you of their silence.
can we trust them? And he's like, trust me, they're not going to be talking to anybody. And then that's when Turban Guy is like, hey.
I didn't notice that.
No, I didn't notice anything.
Turban Guy's like,
everything taken care of?
As you ordered, Excellence.
I've taken care of that business you talked about. Well, the business was he murdered those two. But I said that in my whole run of the operation. Why kill those guys? What were they going to call Moscow and be like, we're blackmailing you? Or were they going to call the circus? Were they going to call Berlin? Like, why did you have to silence? Like, can you imagine how difficult it is to forge that stuff? You'd think Kamal Khan would want to keep those guys for the future. The Kamal Khan's whole business is selling fraudulent jewelry.
It feels like an idea that was in another draft of somebody else's stuff, and we got like that Blofeld scene where the guy, the two guys who made the radar tracker, and they were all excited. They're like, "Oh, we're gonna make it. We're gonna leave," and then they get blown up in the helicopter. Like, it feels like that was the intent, and then they either cut the scene or I don't know, something happened there.
Yeah.
But the thing I was going to bring up was that, I always talk about how these movies after the sixth movie, they're always trying to take whatever's popular at the time. And I always get this wrong about this movie. is that every time I watch this movie, I think, oh, they must have borrowed from Temple of Doom. This movie precedes Temple of Doom. This movie came out a year before that movie. So this makes me wonder, did Spielberg and Lucas see this movie and were like, oh, like we should do stuff that's also in this movie, such as like the goat head or, the creepy palace and all that kind of stuff. Like it feels very reminiscent.
Yeah. We already know that Spielberg not only has somewhat been attached to previous iterations of Bond, but also that he puts Bond references in his own movies, including casting Sean Connery.
Yeah.
Sean Connery.
But this movie takes place a year before, came out a year before it. So it's not.
We've constantly talked about Q scenes.
Yeah.
What about this one? This one, as far as goofy Q scenes go, this was probably one of my favorites, actually. Like as far as being funny, but like understanding that this part is supposed to be funny because it's a Q scene.
Having problems keeping it up, Q?
It's the furthest that he's ever gone in trying to upset Q.
It really is.
Really, 007. Look, I haven't time for these adolescent antics.
Bond goes there specifically so that Q will place a tracker on the egg, which means that Bond wants Kamal Khan / Blondie to take the egg. When he shows up at the hotel and it's like, you have a guest over here, and it's Blondie, Bond knows right away he wants her to take the egg because he wants to be able to track the egg.
He suggests the trade. The egg for your life.
But he still bangs her anyway. Like he still uses the egg as leverage to bang her, even though all he had to do was be like, yeah, take the egg, take it back to Kamal Khan. He still is like, well, I might as well get laid while I'm at it. Like he prolongs their whole engagement so he can get some Octopussy.
It's not the first time Bond's done something like that.
It's certainly not the first time. I mean, again, we're talking about Bond who tricked Solitaire into jumping into bed. Like, Bond always takes mission over pussy. But if Bond can combine those two...
honestly, think about it.
That's a good mission.
Whether he just gives her the egg or not, do you think they're just going to leave him alone?
No,
he knows that they're coming after him, so he's like, "F yeah, I'm gonna get some pussy. Let her take the egg.
I want them dividends,
and then we'll deal with the rest." Like, he knows the end result is the same. So give her the egg, still get f***ed.
Yeah.
Keep the egg.
You want this egg? I'm gonna have to fertilize some eggs then. Kamal Khan, our real introduction of him comes in the Backgammon scene, right? We saw him before, but we're really introduced to him in the Backgammon scene where he is doing what? He's cheating. Just like who?
No heroin.
What's his face? Goldfinger, right?
Goldfinger, exactly.
Yeah.
So we have our same little... He's cheating some poor sap who's like...
Damn. Always a 6 when you need it.
Always.
Unfortunately, the Major never gets his money back in the same way that the guy in Goldfinger does. But it's, once again, to McCurdy's point, we're always referencing another Bond movie, just in a different way, which isn't a bad thing, but it's fun to point out. And then, what does Turban Guy do with the dice?
Yeah,
crushes him.
Just like comment below if you know better than these fucking guys.
Odd Job.
Oh,
just like fucking Odd Job. Yeah.
The
breaking the golf balls. Yeah.
Is it definitely referencing and not recycling? Because I feel like recycling
Same
is
thing.
You're
It's the same
being
thing.
lazy and you can't think of new stuff. But if it's referencing, it's on purpose, and you're like calling back. I don't know.
I think it's like when people say, "What's an homage?" Is it like respecting something you love, or is it ripping off? And it's like you can argue either way.
I don't think it's
it's certainly not
somewhere in
bad
the middle.
because it's completely different.
Yeah,
it's done completely differently,
Yeah, I
even
don't
though it's the
even
same stuff.
think about or notice it, honestly.
Yeah,
somewhere in the middle.
But
it's interesting that it's like the first time we see that game because going into it I was like, oh, they're gonna play Baccarat. And then I was like, oh, they're not. Baccarat.
Yeah.
Baccarat.
And that's
They're
what I
not.
mean.
They're playing backgammon.
It's the same but different. It's a good way of going about
Nice.
it. Once Bond gets back to, I guess they're driving around Germany because he's going to jump off into East Berlin to chase down the train. M says,
We verified the Octopussy Circus was in East Berlin when we lost 009.
but don't you think that if 009 was a goddamn clown, you might look into what circuses were in town at the time, and you might start investigating that first rather than
Why the hell was he dressed as a clown?
Charlie, listen, this is the same organization that looks at a photo and says, oh, his sister is in Nassau.
Nassau.
That's where the bombs are at. His sister is there.
Yeah. Hey, wait, I don't care where the bombs are. His sister's fucking hot. She might have 8 pussies.
Let me start searching her.
Anyway, okay, and then otherwise, though, so what does Bond do instead of investigate the circus? Because I don't know, I guess he's got 2 things, right? He can either investigate why 009 is in a clown outfit, or he can follow the whole lead about the egg, right, that's being sold at Sotheby's. So he goes to Sotheby's because that's probably the more direct route to get to his bad guy who he thinks is going to be the seller. You know, sure. Yeah. I really do love that moment. I love when Bond is a provocateur.
Provocateur.
I like when he goes somewhere to, like in From Russia with Love, he goes to spring a trap. He literally provokes Kamal Khan.
Have you gone mad? Let's see how badly he wants it.
Who, as he's saying, he's like, normally he's a seller. This time he's a buyer. Well, why? Oh, he must desperately need this original back. Well, let's figure out why. I think that lends to why the opening of this film is so strong. The first half of the movie is very strong because it introduces a lot of, minus the prologue, which again, I think the prologue's badass, but it has no weight on the actual plot. The plot begins with our clown. Why was 009 dressed as a clown? Why does 009 have this egg? He's replacing 009, and as we've said before, Bond having connections to fellow 00s is always cool. We don't have a lot of it, but when we do, it's pretty cool. And he goes to this auction, and he provokes the bad guy, and that sends him on his way. That covers like the first half of the movie, and once we get to India, everything kind of weakens. And then once we get back to Berlin, it strengthens. And then once we get back to India, it weakens. So that's kind of our divide throughout the whole movie is like, yes, the tuk-tuk chase is fun. I'll say that when it comes down to Kamal Khan, I think Kamal Khan is a broken record guy when it comes to keeping Bond alive. It never really feels like there are too many assassins, and it never feels like Kamal Khan is just stupid. Like, why don't you just shoot him in the face? Because the first time he's bested, he's like,
spend the money quickly, Mr. Bond.
And then he sends Turban Guy on him, and Bond bests him and a bunch of other assassins in a wacky chase, but it still works because it's our first one. Bond gets away, all well and good. Then after that, Kamal Khan sends Blondie to be like, hey, I'm going to bang you and you're going to give me the egg. And Bond's like, okay, because I want you to take the egg anyway. But then they kidnap Bond because the whole thing is we're going to torture you to figure out what you know. Because, for Kamal Khan, he's like, I need to know if he knows about Berlin and that we're going to bomb it.
Well, supposing, for argument's sake, I don't feel like talking.
Well, don't worry. You will.
But then Bond ends up escaping. Then he tries to hunt Bond. Bond still escapes, and Kamal Khan's like,
Mr. Bond is indeed a very rare breed, soon to be made extinct.
Then when he goes to report to Octopussy,
Bond has escaped.
How careless of you.
I apologize.
Oh, by the way, Kamal, I'd like you to meet my new house guest.
An old friend of the family, you might say.
So then at that point, he then hires assassins to then storm Babe Island to take Bond out, but spare Octopussy. So it all feels natural, and it doesn't feel contrived. It doesn't feel like Kamal Khan's a stupid asshole who should just find somebody to shoot Bond in the face. It all feels like he kind of underestimates him at first, and Bond naturally gets away from these situations. It doesn't feel like Live and Let Die or like Moonraker. Just keep hiring assassins to try to kill Bond, and then the guy in charge looks like an idiot. It all feels natural within the plot, and that Kamal Khan is not an idiot. He's actually still a really smart guy, even up to the end. Basically, Octopussy, she's like, I want to see Bond.
His name is James Bond.
Bring him here.
is dangerous.
And Kamal Khan's like, that's a bad idea. I think we should just torture him for information instead. Because again, in his mind, he's like, I want to know if Bond knows anything about this bomb. I don't care about you, Octopussy. I'm going to betray you anyway. I've got fruit flies around my beer. But then Bond escapes his compound, heads over to Babe Island to figure out what's going on there. He confronts Octopussy, who then tells him, you're actually responsible for my father's death. And Bond's like, well, do you want vengeance? She's like, no, I've actually always wanted to thank you for giving him an alternative to...
I don't remember that in the scene.
That was a queef. That was meant to represent an Octopussy queef.
From which of her 8 pussies?
One of 8. That's an eighth of a queef. Anyway, so yeah, but like I do.
Like Jesus.
You're killing me, dude. You are killing me with this movie.
Why?
You've turned this movie into like the slow death. I'm like,
the man with the 8 pussies.
Has anybody ever analyzed it to death like this?
Yes, and it's killing me because it's not helping the movie's case. No. It's slowly revealing the problems.
What's weird
with this
is
movie.
I enjoyed the movie.
If you overanalyze it, this is not a good movie.
That's
not
every
This is a
Roger
movie
Moore
that is
movie.
meant to be watched while you're like off your fucking rocker.
You guys are helping temper my excitement on the movie.
I will say this, Charlie, about the relationship with Bond and Octopussy. It feels like an added element to just give the story a little something. And I'm not going to say it like it hurts the movie by any means, because it doesn't. But it's also like, oh, cool, these characters had history. It's kind of there, like he knew her dad, and then and it's like mentioned in like 2 scenes, I think. Like not even multiple scenes, really. It's just kind of a scene where they're in the bedroom and they go
one scene.
They go to one room to the bedroom.
Then she storms off in anger towards her bed so conveniently for Bond to follow. Oh, you ran to your bed? Perfect.
But there's a line about them being 2 of a kind.
You're right. We are 2 of a kind.
I feel like a better movie would embellish all that and make it so that like the end of the movie of Bond trying to save her from Kamala Harris at the end of the movie would have made more sense. But the end of the movie doesn't make sense.
We all need to be saved. I think if they had one more intimate scene with something to specifically point them out as 2 of a kind, because her whole thing is this, right? She's like, I've always wanted to meet you. You're responsible for my father's death, but my father was also a criminal. You gave him a better way out than him facing a court-martial. Like, my family's still rich because he stole all this gold from, like, Korea or whatever. That's all well and good, but because it's an interesting twist, right? We think that Octopussy wants him dead, but if you rewatch the movie, when she's doing her Blofeld thing and he says this guy's name is James Bond, she pauses for a second. She's like, I want you to bring him to me, because in her mind, we think she wants him dead, but in her mind, she's like, I've always wanted to meet James Bond. Holy shit, this is my time.
I'd hoped fate would bring us together one day.
So when Bond shows up, they have their cute little moment of like, whatever, I feel like I've known you forever. And then Kamal Khan comes in and he's like, Bond escaped. And she's like, you idiot. Oh, anyway, I want you to meet my friend, James Bond. And Bond walks in. He's like, oh, you could say I'm a friend of the family. Like, it's just, it's Bond jumping into his smooth you. Like, he just walks between the raindrops because he's awesome, because he's great, because he's awesome. But then, but they needed one more scene for us to feel like they really fell in love, because all we got instead was Octopussy says, hey, I'd like you to work for me.
I'm not for hire.
Naturally, you do it for Queen and country.
Again, Bond reminding the audience he doesn't care about money. He cares about king and country. And she's like, well, fuck you then. You who you to judge me? You don't know me, Bond. And then, and then runs over to the bed, and then they fall on it all romantically. Like,
the movie's trying to do something interesting, but it just doesn't improve the movie for me.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, this is the thing.
Is Gogol a good guy?
Gogol's kind of always been a good guy.
He's kind of a good guy in this film. You're like, he doesn't want to start war. He wants to stop Orlov.
Dude, he's literally M. You would never say that M is a bad guy, but if M has a method of getting an upper hand on the Russians, he'll take it.
Yeah.
Gogol, he's a good guy, but if he has a method of if he can get the ATAC, like if M can get the Lecter, he's going to get the Lecter. If Gogol can get the ATAC, he's going to get the ATAC. But they're not going to kill millions of people.
I want to avoid full-out fucking war because it's pointless. Like, sit down, young one.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's kind of same with Octopussy, that I get the dynamic, but I don't know. It very conveniently she switches into an ally almost too quickly for the
I just feel like this whole movie is 3 writers and not a single voice, and it just needed it. I think this is what happens when the stunt coordinators are too involved in a movie, where the stunt stuff, like, it's great, and I've said that about this movie plenty of times. It's fantastic.
Bond goes on 2 wheels again.
But that all being said, it's like the story stuff just doesn't work, because it's like one person had an idea where the story could go, another person had an idea where the story could go, and then in I think at some point in the middle, they're like, well, because of time, we can't really go into detail about like the nuances of this jewel plot, so chase scene. And like I feel like it's just overpowered with that, where it like that's when you start to explain the movie to me, I'm like, I can't anymore. Even like the Octopussy stuff is so like contrived, because it's just like, let's stuff this really cool story that's in one of the Fleming books.
Let me pose a change to you. What if instead of the prologue we had, or even keep the prologue as it is, but what if that prologue took place in the past, and it was Octopussy's dad, and
That'd be
it
much
was
better.
Bond pulling all this stuff, but also facing Octopussy's dad, and him killing himself ultimately or whatever. And ultimately what that would lead to is whether there's still that mystery of Octopussy being this, that, or the other, whatever, it would add some weight to like, she wants to kill Bond, and Bond's like, man, this chick really wants to kill me to avenge her dad. But then it turns out that she's like, no, I actually respect you for giving my dad an out. You give him an honorable out. You know, that kind of reverse of expectation would have lended to a heavier story.
It needed a third beat to that story that it just never got. And it's like, that was frustrating. But then, like, you know, the jewel plot's very convoluted. It really feels like 2 story ideas that were, someone was writing this general Orlov plot, and then someone was writing the jewel plot, and they were like, well, how do these things come together? And then, not to mention, you had to put Octopussy in there as well, and it was like, it's just, it doesn't help. Like, the movie needed a lot of clarity for me, and like it's definitely on the bottom of the list for me because of this. Like, it's a frustrating movie. Now, I could see, I'm looking at the list right now. I'm looking at the list right now.
Yes, before I said all that and you went into depression mode, which cracks me up. Before that, where did you have it, and then where do you have it now?
It's somewhere where you and I have talked before. Honestly, it is.
Okay.
But it's in that realm.
Go ahead. Let's get into ranking. Where are you?
I don't think it's as bad as You Only Live Twice.
Where are you? Where do you rank?
Nice.
Tell us your
I don't know how I feel about
rank, you motherfucker.
Here's the
Where
weird
do you
quandary.
put Octopussy?
Moonraker is really stupid.
Okay.
But Moonraker has a lot more clarity in its story. And then I know you complain about Live and Let Die so much. So I don't know. It's somewhere between Live and Let Die and Moonraker for me. I know you're going to argue with me about the again with the car stuff. I know that's exactly where you're going to go with the
Not
chase scenes.
Not necessarily, but go ahead.
But I could see you going with, well, there's repetitive chase scenes, and as far as the villain's plot go, he makes them look stupid. But I will say this about both those points. At least the villain's plot is much more simplified and like makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And it's very clear. And I don't have to think about it, and it doesn't make me do this.
Yeah.
The action is just as good. I think the boat chase scene is still pretty top notch in that movie overall.
Yeah.
Even though you have Sergeant J.W. Pepper, which you and I both love, he's still an element that kind of adds to the overall essence of the story. With this, it's just like the convoluted plot, but I could see it going above Live and Let Die. So it's somewhere in between those two, because then I think about it and I think about, well, yeah, but then there's also some good stuff in this movie as well. But the plot also really kind of drags the movie down for me. The end of the movie kind of ruins it for me.
Now I want to hear Nan's, because Nan started off saying he liked this film. And other films that we put towards the top, Nan's gut reaction was, I fucking hate this film. So now we've started with McCurdy putting this to the bottom. Nan starting off with he liked this film. I want to see where Nan's wants to put this.
Yeah, I mean, Charlie definitely helped clarify for me that it wasn't me being dumb. The movie is kind of dumb. I did really enjoy the movie, but now that
as
I know
usual,
that
I'm going to want to rank it
sucked.
higher than anybody, and I've, as usual, shot myself in the fucking foot.
Yourself.
Okay, Char, I'm glad to hear that, because if I had to place a rank on it before having heard how, like, the bad guy plot doesn't make a whole lot of sense, I probably would have put it pretty high. Where would I have put it? I was thinking somewhere in the top 5 for sure.
Wow.
Damn.
Initially.
Wow.
Damn.
Really?
Yeah.
No.
Where? Like above Dr. No?
Above Dr. No.
Above the man with the golden gun?
That's what I'm wrestling with.
So you would have put it at number 4.
4, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Big time.
Okay. And,
But now
and here's
that-
the thing. Here's the thing.
So
if you
it's
if you
fun
don't
and I
like,
enjoyed
again,
it.
Yeah.
And if I
you
don't think too much
hard,
about the whole
yes,
the bomb and the jewelry and all that stuff, it matters. It does matter, I guess. But
yeah,
if you just glaze your eyes over and try to ignore the main bad guy plot, then it is
like we always say. If you
the point of our review
but
system.
But at the same time, it is and it isn't, right? Like what we're always trying to do is like I keep saying every time, I'm like, don't put too much weight on the Goofy. Yes, Goofy has weight, and with Moonraker, it had so much weight it went to the bottom. With Diamonds Are Forever, it had so much it went to the bottom. With You Only Live Twice, it doesn't have as much Goofy, but it doesn't pack as much of a punch.
Octopussy is not an argument about Goofy so much as is about clarity in its plot, and that is where the movie falters. Like, I want to point this out. I think it's just hilarious to me that everyone points to this movie for the clown bit, when in actuality, what makes this movie bad is not the goofiness of the movie, and it has its stupid moments. But the worst part is the writing of the movie is really, really bad.
Well, like we've said, the clown bit is actually good within context. It's actually really
that's
good.
Not what I'm saying. Charlie,
I know.
I know.
I'm adding to your point. It's like the clown bit is actually good within context. And my whole thing is that if you ignore all the bitchings that I did trying to analyze the plot, all you need to know is that there's a bomb on this U.S. Air Force base and Bond has to get to it. And then all you need to know is that they're trying to get to Kamal Khan, but like Bond needs to rescue Octopussy, even though he should have gone in there with her at the first point. I'm shooting myself in the foot again.
It's somewhere, you know what, Charlie, I could live with it being next to Thunderball, and the fact that Thunderball also has some really stupid plot. Thunderball is right above Live and Let Die.
At least with other movies that have stuff that don't make sense, it's pretty blatantly obvious. With this one, it's like you kind of have to think about it. It's not so surface obvious that it doesn't make sense.
Though.
I don't know.
It is. It's like we have jewels, and then we have a nuclear bomb, and then the connection between the two is very unclear.
If you simplify it down to Orlov wants to set off a bomb, Kamal Khan does something with jewelry that somehow is funding Orlov's plot, and Kamal Khan's getting money out of it.
Even the end of the movie just is kind of added on, tacked on. It's like, oh, well, we have to get the bad guy.
That whole extra bits.
It's just really drags the movie down even more.
Who doesn't love, though, when Bond slides down a banister and he's blowing motherfuckers away
that was cool.
with an AK?
And he has to shoot that
as
baluster
he
topper off or whatever.
Shoots the knob off so he doesn't break his balls. Yeah,
I do
Brilliant.
appreciate that. That's a very Bond. I mean,
That
and
is
they,
a good
what do
scene.
they bring in that moment?
But that's this whole movie. That's this whole movie is good scenes intermixed with so much fucking stupidity and pointlessness or over convoluted plots that I'm sorry, it loses me.
So here's my reasonings. So with Thunderball, it's the movies have just enough weird plot like Thunderball has a bunch of weird plot conveniences, but I think the story is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
It doesn't get really
great
confusing,
action.
and it's got great action. It's got a great underwater stuff. Live and Let Die, on the other hand, it's again, I love that whole New Orleans death. I love all the setups for all the places Bond will go into the movie in the beginning of the film. I love the chase sequences are still really good. Even though, yes, we get a somewhat annoying character, he kind of fits within the genre that this film is trying to adhere to. And yes, there's the exploding fart death, but I think that villain works really well overall in the movie as far as his performance. And he's like charismatic and like I remember him leaving the movie.
Yeah.
This movie, I will say, I always kind of forget that Kamala Harris is in this movie. I said that on purpose. I forget that both of these villains are in the movie, and then I always forget who's the main villain because this movie's not very clear on it. It's like the writer was like, well, we should make the general the clear villain. Like, he probably would have been the stronger
And Orlov
of the
dies
two.
in such a pathetic way. As Charlie brought. Why is he running?
Here's the thing. I like how he dies.
Like, why is he doing that?
I like how he dies, but I don't know why.
Yeah, why did he
That
do
is
it?
that is the confusing part. I like how he dies because it fits really well with what
He's
was
got
going on at
henchmen
the
on
time.
the train to do his job.
Yeah,
Why is he
like-
running out?
Yeah.
And like I will
That's
be a
what's
hero.
weird
Like
about
it lends to his whole Messiah complex. Like it's
Yeah.
it's a good death for him, but why it happens doesn't really make
Yeah.
sense.
So that's why I'm like struggling because I see your points with Live and Let Die being the lesser film, but at the same time, it just seems like a much more complete idea.
Let me run through where I'm at because I'm the guy who caused all this mess with my microscope, but I still want to put it above Live and Let Die. It just has, because we're all in the same neighborhood. Okay, we're below Thunderball.
No, Nans is
But we're-
above Doctor now.
That's where I was initially before
Okay,
the clarification of the plot not making sense.
I
Yeah,
apologize.
we're like
I
okay because Nan's being our first time viewer, he's like, hey, yeah, it all made
He has
sense,
an
right?
yeah.
I mean, it was kind of confusing, but I could follow it. But again, I've
I
seen this
forgave
movie.
a lot, like of the.
I've probably
bad guy
seen this
plot.
movie about 50 times in my life, about 50 times, but I've never watched like. Nowadays, me watching these movies takes me about 5 hours because all I'm doing is taking notes and trying to like connect the dots and but when they're written poorly, it's like 10 hours to watch it. But again, all the same, I'm looking at position 9, below Thunderball, above Live and Let Die. Let's just see if you guys agree with what I have to say.
I can't put it above Live
mostly
and Let
because-
Die. I'm
well,
somewhere
hang
with
on,
McCurdy.
hang on. Let me. I get that. We're in the neighborhood though, so let me just run
Yeah.
through it. And if you agree or disagree, that'll help me because I don't know where the I want to put this movie because it's a goddamn mess.
Well, it sounds like we're split.
So
Hold on, I want to hear.
I
I want to hear what he says.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so I want to
yeah,
put it
yeah.
above Live and Let Die because I think mostly the first half investigation and the Berlin train and bomb climax is so strong, regardless of Bond being a clown or the middle hunt getting its goofy / stupid out. Like I said, Kamal Khan never looks stupid, whereas Mr. Big does. It's like just fucking kill him. Just fucking kill him. This time, the chase scene is Bond racing to get towards something rather than away, which actually lends to there being some tension, especially with the ticking clock of this bomb. Like, will he get there? Will he not? Versus Live and Let Die is just get away, get away, get away. And there's just no tension because he just keeps getting away, getting away, getting away. And even if the plot is a bit clouded, as I pointed out in detail, Bond is solving a mystery about why 009 was found dead in a clown outfit and almost shares his fate literally. And then his shared history with Octopussy, bringing them close, is nice, though maybe a bit too subdued. You know, the volume on it could have been turned up, like I said, with like maybe the prologue could have been dedicated to her father's death or whatever, a little jumping through time. But I think it's stronger than Solitaire's love affair because it's more specific to Bond, like specifically to Bond, since it's a part of his history. It's a bit unexpected in that sense. Maybe it's just a simple, like a rewrite thing, but it still is unexpected and therefore kind of intriguing. But I think it sinks below Thunderball specifically when the commando scene is given to a bunch of circus performers rather than our badass underwater scene, regardless of, how you feel about that. Like, that shit is still badass. And with this, it's like every punch thrown by a circus performer is weak and kind of lame. Circus performers should be able to do a bunch of cool shit. We do see some of them do cool stuff, like where they're flipping around, kicking dudes in the face, but everybody in the foreground looks lame. Everybody in the background looks great. Anyway, Khan's motivation overall isn't really established whatsoever, other than the assumption that it's just for a payday, which is kind of weak. Like, maybe if he wanted Octopussy for himself, like in a romantic way, like he wanted her, but she kept rejecting him, and he's like, whatever, bitch, I'm gonna betray you and I'm gonna steal all this money. Like, that would have been a little more personal rather than this guy, this just like vague bad guy looking for a payday. Like, Orlov's motivation is like rock solid and great, but Kamal Khan's is kind of weak. The plane ending is pretty terrific.
As an action sequence, it's really cool.
Yeah, like we said, like Tom Cruise is like, I want to do that, and he did. Like Tom Cruise straight up replicated that. But I still prefer the ending of Thunderball with the cheesy boat fighting over the steering wheel, followed by the flying away with the hook thing. But I think the plane ending here still beats out Live and Let Die's train fight. As you can tell, I'm kind of wishy-washy and back and forth, but overall, I think Octopussy just like packs a harder punch than Live and Let Die. Live and Let Die was still Roger Moore's first. It's a little more subtle. It's like, it's kind of a coin flip, but I'm kind of opting back to just an overall feeling of Octopussy being superior versus Live and Let Die's just like constant chase scenes and assassinations and just a bad guy who just feels powerless versus Kamal Khan, who doesn't feel powerless. He feels competent, but just naturally gets bested in the same way that Goldfinger naturally gets bested by Bond rather than Goldfinger looking like a fucking idiot.
I agree. Below Thunderball, above Lit and Let Die. I can settle with that.
I can agree after your argument.
Yeah. Whatever.
McCurdy doesn't want it.
I'm like, no, it's not
I
that. I
honestly want to know though. This is probably the hardest movie to place in our history. This is tough.
We're in the right realm. We're in the right realm, which is bottom table for me, which is what I wanted.
Right realm.
Red realm.
Right realm.
I can live with it being a bit above Live and Let Die. I do think that there's a lot of stuff that Live and Let Die just does a better job of as a whole.
Like what?
Like,
go into
again,
that.
like it's a clear...
Preparation H?
Preparation H, bud.
On the whole.
I think the story's a little bit clearer. I think even, the plots as far as Bond's...
no doubt the story's a little clearer.
Like,
yeah.
As far as Bond's introduction into the story, right? It's, our agents are getting killed, go investigate. It's the kind of the same thing. It's like 009 is killed. Go figure out why 009 was killed. But I do like that... I do like this goes back to like being more of a spy movie as far as the East versus the West. But I also think it's super convoluted in ways that just don't help the movie at all.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm not saying like I'm going to fight tooth and nail because I'm like,
I think after we get past that 8th spot that I'm not, kind of like McCurdy saying, I'm not that concerned because we get down, You Only Live Twice, Diamonds Are Forever, Moonraker, etc. They're all...
I'm very certain it's above Thunderball. You know what I mean? Like, I can't not... I can be like, this is much better than Thunderball. Or, sorry, Thunderball is a much better movie than this movie. Yes, sorry.
Yes,
like,
and that's where I
Thunderball
agree.
still
I can't put it above
outclasses it.
Thunderball.
Like, that's my new favorite word is outclassing. And so far... I mean, if you just go through it, you're like, is it better than Goldfinger? No. Resurrected Love? No. Spy Loving? No. Like, if you just go through it, it's like, it once you get below that number 8 Thunderball threshold, it's definitely going to be in that realm. And this, like the train bomb sequence is so strong. I think it's stronger than any of the plethora of chase scenes from Live and Let Die, where all it is Bond trying to get away. And
well, that's it. Yeah, in this one, he's trying to stop something versus trying to get away, and that's. But
I mean, again, beyond a ticking clock, like I said, he's trying to get somewhere and stop it, and he's running into like he runs into like first off he falls off the train, right, which is like holy shit, how's he gonna catch up? Then he has to worry about the assassin on his trail. Then he has to start hitchhiking, which nobody picks him up. Then he finally gets picked up by some crazy Germans.
Beer. Yeah.
Like, you want to get drunk? And he's like, no, I'm trying to save your life. And then he's got the phone booth lady where, like, let's be real, James Bond would have just, like, cut her throat or, like, he would have thrown her out. But at the same time, I bet in his mind he's going, okay, I can either call and waste a bunch of time and I can deal with this chick, or I can just steal her car and I still have time to get to the base and handle it myself because nobody's going to be able to get there in time. Like, dealing with government bureaucracy, like, hey, there's a nuke in a cannon. Oh, this is a crank call. Hang up.
Yeah.
Bond knows. I just need to get there and handle it myself.
Where can I find the base commander? It's urgent.
Let's see your circus pass.
Damn it, man. I said it's urgent.
Get out with your hands up.
And then he can't get into the circus, so he's got to become a clown. And then once he gets into the circus, he has to be a clown and convince the base commander. Like, all these layers are a lot of fun and really
my
cool.
favorite part about that whole sequence is how, like, he is a clown, and it's almost played very dramatically as he's a clown. People are laughing at him. No one can take anything he does seriously.
Are you saying it's like meta? Like Roger Moore's like, everybody thinks I'm a clown as James Bond, but I'm very serious?
Yeah.
Like, I know I like to have fun from time to time and, like, go to space, but, like, nobody takes me seriously? McCurdy, that's brilliant. Everybody get the f*** out!
Yeah, but that's the moment in the movie that I'm like, that's the best. As far as the layers go, that's probably one of the better parts of the movie, for sure.
That's actually incredibly deep.
Part. Because, like, yeah, it's kind of scary because everyone's laughing and having a good time, and he's like, there's a fucking bomb. I got to figure out how to get to this bomb, you know?
Yeah. I like that. I like that interpretation that this is Roger Moore screaming out, like, this is serious shit. And everybody's like, Bond movies are goofy. Everything you do is goofy. He's like, do you know how many times I've saved your life and you don't even know?
Y'all are idiots.
Bitch. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
So, yeah, I could, so to wrap this up, I could be okay with putting it under Thunderball, above Live and Let Die.
Okay.
Yep. I'm there.
All right.
I'd be all right with that.
Nathan, you were feeling spot number 5.
Yeah, if I was going la 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 la, ignoring like the whole plot, I would have probably placed it either 3, 4, 5, somewhere in there.
Okay.
Not to drag this out and like go into that whole discussion because it doesn't matter. For this ranking, the plot and everything does matter. So I'd have to. I think we've settled on a good spot below Thunderball, above Live and Let Die. But I really enjoyed it, and I would enjoy rewatching this movie.
It's not a bad watch. It's just, it is.
Somebody's going, Michael G. Wilson, none of this makes sense. And he's like, opening weekend, nobody's going to know. The first time viewers are going to be like, that was great. And then anybody watching it multiple times is going to be like, well, wait a second.
They're going to know. They're never going to know.
They're going to know, bud.
So before we lock it in, let me just throw out my last note. First off, there isn't a single goddamn Bond joke in this whole movie.
As far as a death, yeah.
Nothing.
He makes jokes, but yeah, your criteria of a Bond joke.
Bond joke with death.
None. So that was just a little depressing, but and then otherwise, okay. Do you guys remember the name Admiral Motti?
No.
Admiral Motti is in Star Wars. I know we reference Star Wars frequently.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
That's the guy sitting next to the base commander in the circus.
Oh, that's why he looks familiar.
Yeah, just had to point that out because of all the Star Wars, original Star Wars.
The guy that gets choked by Vader?
your
is he in
devotion
this
to that
movie?
ancient religion.
I'm sure the general will get a big blast out of this.
I know you won't be disappointed.
That's this station is now the ultimate power in the universe, which that quote, like, I wasn't a Star Wars head growing up, but that quote was the only thing that stuck out to me watching Star Wars for the first time. I thought that guy was awesome. And then he later shows up in, like, I was the kid watching Bond movies growing up. I wasn't the kid watching Star Wars and obsessing over it. But one could say that I loved Pussy from day one. Goldfinger still at number 1, From Russia with Love number 2, The Spy Who Loved Me number 3, The Man with the Golden Gun number 4, Dr. No number 5, For Your Eyes Only number 6, On Her Majesty's Secret Service number 7, Thunderball number 8, Welcome Octopussy to number 9. Oh, we really fucked up not putting Octopussy at number 8. Moving on. Live and Let Die, number 10. Number 11, Moonraker. Number 12, Diamonds Are Forever. Sorry, You Only Live Twice. I don't know if you're ever getting out from the bottom at number 13.
Probably not.
But, you know, Sean Connery has got one at the top, one at the bottom, so whatever. McCurdy.
The only leading actress to be in 2 Bond films, Maud Adams.
To the
To
sexy
Maud.
Swede, right? She's a Swede?
She's a Swede.
To Maud.
And her 8 pussies.
To Maud and her 8 pussies. She gave me her pussy, she had 8 pussies. Why did we pick the longest fucking franchise on the planet?
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I fucking love Bond, but holy shit on my
I mean, that's why we're doing Bond, right?
because you gotta
Because
be
at
able
least
to
2 of us
love
here
it.
are crazy about Bond.
Yeah. Fucking crazy, yo.
Crazy.
All right. Ready, boys?